Whenever you guys are ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Everybody ready?
Yep.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order the Electoral Board meeting of July 22nd. We're meeting here at the McCoart building instead of our usual place, and I'm happy to see everyone. Hope we are enjoying a good long summer. Lots of work ahead of us and lots of work already accomplished. So let's begin our meeting as we typically do, with the moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please stand. Thank you very much. And now our Pledge of Allegiance. Our flag is back here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will move next with our reports from our electoral board members.
Minutes first.
I'm sorry, sir?
We're doing minutes first.
Pardon me. Yes, we shall. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, I
Mr.
move that
Secretary?
we approve the minutes for our May 7, 2026 meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much, unanimously. Okay, and now, thank you so much. Madam Vice Chair, would you like to begin?
I want to thank everybody for the hard work to come. This is going to be a really busy year, and I'm excited. Prince William County has a great electoral process, and that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I agree with Yolanda that Prince William County and in fact the Commonwealth of Virginia have experienced qualified election officials, election officers, administrators. And I'm confident that this midterm election that's coming up in about 100 days will be free and fair and open, and that all of the Commonwealth of Virginia will respect the results of the election regardless of who wins. Now, unfortunately, I don't think that we can say the same for the White House and the Department of Justice. Over the last year and a half, there have been a series of efforts by the White House and the Department of Justice essentially to seize the midterm elections from being administered by the states and the local governments to have them federalized and have them run under new rules that are established by fiat, basically, from the White House. And a number of steps have happened since then. We've had the Department of Justice and the FBI have seized election material and ballots from Fulton County, Virginia, from the 2020 election. And they wanted to get the contact information for all the election officers that worked in Fulton County in 2020. Fortunately, a judge said they weren't entitled to that information. But even after that, we've seen threats from the Department of Justice threatening that election administrators and election officers, you should know, we're putting you on notice that we will prosecute you if you don't follow the law that we believe exists in the midterm elections. We had the Secretary of Homeland Security threatening to withhold federal funding. First, they slashed the funding back in last year for CISA, the federal agency that's responsible for electronic security. And now they're threatening to withhold funding from states unless you turn over your voter registration database to us and essentially let us decide who gets mailed in ballots and how the election is run. So there are just too many disturbing signs, in my view, that we have no guarantee that the White House is going to accept the results of the midterm election if they don't go the way that they think they should. And so I know every election administrator across the country is on high alert. And people are doing tabletop exercises about all sorts of incredible things that you never thought about. So what happens if we have ICE agents that show up at a polling place, or National Guard, or they come in to try and seize ballots or election equipment? These are not the kind of things that we've ever had to worry about before in our entire history as a country. And I'm concerned. I know that we're going to do the right thing in Virginia, and I know that the states all across the country are going to do their very best to do the right thing. And I hope that the White House and the Department of Justice will accept the results of a free, fair, and open election coming up in just over 100 days. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. As you know, our president gave an address to the nation recently about the state of election administration and integrity. Ensuring the integrity of our elections is fundamental to preserving trust in American democracy. According to a U.S. Department of Homeland Security review of state voter rolls and public records, they identified approximately 278,000 non-citizens who are registered to vote in federal elections. Since some states refuse to share their voter files, the real number of non-citizens voting is actually much higher. Yet even this limited analysis found more than 250,000 foreigners illegally registered to vote. As the president explained, hundreds of millions of U.S. voter files are in the hands of foreign governments. Our machines and ballot counting systems are exposed to hacking and manipulation. China and other countries have been trying to interfere in our elections. Evidence of fraud has been buried. Hundreds of thousands of non-citizens and dead people are listed and active on the voter rolls. We have an obligation to do everything we can to ensure that elections in Prince William County are conducted lawfully, and that one eligible vote per qualified voter is cast and counted. We cannot control what happens in other states or counties, but we can and should do everything we can to ensure the integrity of elections in our county of Prince William. With that, we shall move to our next item on the agenda, which is our director's report.
And we can, and we do. All right, so I'm going to start off today with talking about our budget situation and where we're at with that. So we ended fiscal 26 about $255,000 over budget. We are presently a little higher than that, but we did just get a reimbursement from the state related to the April special election. So once that goes through, that's about how much we are over budget.
Sorry, I can't hear. Can you use your
Oh, I'm very sorry. I didn't have my microphone on. Let me start over. We're doing our budget report. We ended fiscal 26 about $255,000 over budget. That's of a budget that's a little more than $4 million. So that's about 6% over. We're currently processing reimbursements from the state for the April special election, which we did not get full reimbursement for. Full reimbursement for that would have meant that we were on budget this year. So given the number of special elections we had, an unusual statewide special election, and the fact that we had asked for an increase to our baseline funds in fiscal 27 to cover expenses like salaries and higher printing costs and things like that, I think we did pretty well. I'll give us a B plus for this year. I think we did pretty good. Not excellent, but we do a really outstanding job of minimizing our overtime on our staff and making sure that we're working efficiently, which is important both for controlling, how much money we spend of the taxpayers' dollars, but also making sure that our employees are fresh and not tired and not worn out around election times. I have worked at other agencies where I was working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks for the last month or two before an election. I said then that when I'm a director someday, I won't do that, and we have accomplished that. So our overtime is usually somewhere between maybe 7 to 10% of our overall amount allocated for salaries, which other agencies that I've worked for, it's often somewhere in the 25 to 35% range in an election year, which is every year in Virginia. So I think that's another reason as well, is that we do this all the time, so we're not really caught off guard with things. So Any questions about our budget situation? We will get that increase in baseline funds next year, so that should help us to stay on budget next year and provide, cover our costs from our vendors and make sure that we can pay our staff. Early voting, there was an ordinance approved on July the 7th that is going to open the DMV for the full period of early voting. That was really the only change. There was a minor change in that the changes to the state law made which Sundays have to be available for voting. Basically the Sunday, not 2 days before, but the 9-day before and 16-day before. Those 2 preceding Sundays have to be open. And we had various versions of that in our ordinance that we previously had. So Prince William has had Sunday voting for some time, but this adds 1 additional Sunday to each election type. This will take effect in November. We've already provided notice for this election to the public as to what our hours are. We were open on those Sundays that were required by state law, but the DMV will not open until, I guess it's this Saturday, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, for the current primary. So this is what the schedule will look like then, with the calendar here showing the sort of 45-day period before an election. These squares that are X's are ones when we're closed. You can see Election Day there with the orange star. The white squares are ones where the office and the DMV will be open, and then the green squares are where all sites are open. So one challenge with the new state law is that we're going to have all the sites open on that Sunday, and then not again through the week, and then open again from the last Saturday, from Saturday to Saturday at the end. So that's going to be a little bit of a logistical challenge for us to figure out. We're hoping maybe that law might harmonize a little better with giving localities a little bit more options there, because I don't think we're the only one that's in that boat. There's a lot of the larger localities that open their satellites from that final Saturday for the last 2 Saturdays.
Question, you're keeping track then of who's voting when and where and how, so we'll know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we provide that to you all to kind of monitor, each election. We send in a link. We also provide it to the party chairs so they can see, how that's progressing each election. A general election will be similar, except there'll be 2 full weeks, basically, of early voting at all the satellites. And then for a presidential general, every 4 years, we have 3 full weeks with all the satellite locations open. So I think this is a good improvement. I think it just provides more convenience. One of the key factors we talked about was that the drive times for people in the eastern part of the county were pretty far going to the office, given the density you have to travel through in the eastern part of the county just to get to the middle of the county, and then you still have some miles to go. So this puts really good 80-90% of the population of Prince William within 15 to 20 minutes of an early voting site for the entire period. So that gives people a lot of options. And I think that we've seen that the previous ordinance was a success, partly given the fact that we've had so many voters. We had a significant increase in the 2025 gubernatorial election versus the 2021. We've also seen wait times drop. So we haven't seen wait times like we had back in 2020. The last presidential election we moved voters through very quickly, and we're processing, thousands and thousands of them on some of those early voting days, especially towards the end. So, any questions about early voting at all? Okay, so the DOJ requested information related to the language compliance program, provided most of the information that they requested. Honestly, it's largely publicly available. I think the fact that we're very transparent makes a lot of our information requests really easy for me to fill, because instead of having to search for documents, I just can send people links to things that are already on our website. If you want to see our election officer materials and our training materials, they're all online for the public. So we talk about some of our programs that have won awards, like our open house and putting all of our results tapes online. Those have been model programs, but we also have all of our materials online. So if you're a election observer out at a site and you're not sure what the procedure is supposed to be, you can go see it. You could talk with the chief about it. If you're the DOJ and you want to see our instructions on how to assist voters that need language assistance, those are in the manuals, and that's all available online, in addition to training videos and other training materials. That's all publicly available. The election monitors is under consideration. It requires, I should note, We didn't provide two things. They requested a list of all voters. That is not under my authority to provide them or anybody. It doesn't really matter the requester on that one. List is owned by the state, and while we do provide information requests where somebody might request information about a particular candidate that's running or their own voter history, we can't provide en masse a large list of all the voters in the county.
Do you know whether or not DOJ requested a list of voters from the state, if in fact the state is in control of the list? Did they make a request of the state for that list?
They requested that of all states.
Okay.
And there were some states that provided, and we'll talk about that in a minute, the ones that were provided, you alluded to it earlier too, about the non-citizens. Talk about that a little bit as well. And I know that they have pending, there's litigation between a number of states right now and the DOJ. And, currently the states have won 16 of those court cases, and the DOJ has won none of them, which has been decided by both Republican and democratically appointed judges. So, that seems like the judicial rulings on that have been pretty clear so far, but, that's still ongoing in some instances. That's another reason why, even if I could provide it, it would seem inappropriate for me to provide that, given that there's litigation between the state and the DOJ about that. To then go around the state would be pretty inappropriate in my role. Thankfully, I don't have to make that decision because I'm not allowed to provide them or anybody else that list. They also asked for a list of officers, which we are happy to provide them information on how many officers we have that speak languages, speak additional languages and things like that. It didn't seem like there was any reason for them to have that list. And there was recently a ruling in Georgia where a judge there rejected their, attempt to get the list of all their election officers from Fulton County. So relying on both the guidance from the state and also the judicial precedents we've seen, we didn't provide those things. There were 6 other items on there that covered a range of things from, how we determine the accuracy of our translations, to what we're doing to make sure that our sites are bilingual, to just basic information about where our sites are and what the precinct boundaries are, and our precinct maps. So we provided all of those, and then I also noted to them if they needed additional information in a few of those areas, that there were other resources that we could provide as well. The one thing I didn't have too much of a response about was they asked about our outreach program, which we don't really have an outreach program per se. We occasionally will fill requests when Dahlia has time, but that's rare, and we don't get that many requests, so there wasn't much to provide information on there. So the letter that was sent to us said, as part of our assessment of your bilingual program, we plan to have election monitors at your August 4th primary election. We'll contact you a week prior to discussing the particulars of the monitoring effort. This is a letter they sent. This is consistent with letters that we've received in the past that talked about monitoring the language program. I think we've had that twice in the last 5 years. We haven't had any notes from the DOJ about any inconsistencies or problems with our system. Here's where this varies from past precedent, though. The DOJ was requesting a lot of irrelevant data here. Requesting data on all the voters doesn't really have anything to do with our language program and how it works. And it's also related to ongoing litigation. So that seemed odd. We've never had a primary election monitor before, so I'm not sure why they're monitoring primary elections, which are very low turnout affairs. I mean, we'll talk about our numbers, but I don't think we hit 100 early voters yet?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, we hit 100 early voters, but we don't have that. We don't have that many yet. Also, the stated purpose of the letter is not matching up with social media from the Department of Justice, and no details on how they would plan to measure that compliance. So I sent them my response letter. I sent them, which you all received a copy of. I asked them a number of questions about, well, what is the purpose of this program? And if you're monitoring things that are not, it's clear to me how they want to monitor language compliance. If they're not monitoring language compliance, then what are they monitoring and what methods are they using? How many officers are we talking about here out in the field, or agents, I guess I should say, for the DOJ? So this was from the Assistant, Attorney General. This was a post just from yesterday on Twitter. Good morning. election monitors are fanning out in Maricopa, Apache, and Pima counties for the Arizona primary today. All citizens and only citizens get out and vote in federal races today, feeling confident the government is here to help. I mean, that's work we do all the time in terms of making sure non-citizens are not voting. We are constantly maintaining our voter lists. And again, the letter doesn't mention this at all, and there's been a press from the Assistant Attorney General on Twitter, in podcast interviews, in media interviews, talking about this issue. So which is it? And why does the DOJ need to be elusive about what their purpose is if their purpose is to monitor the language program? Now, that's not to say they don't have a right to monitor violations of federal law. I certainly understand that, and we take that very seriously, and officers take that very seriously. But going back to what Keith said as well, you both touched on aspects of this. Our officers work very hard. In our letter I mentioned to the DOJ, our officers, which were threatened in the letters that they sent to the states, are essentially a volunteer army of senior citizens. And they do a really good job learning all the material they're supposed to learn. We give them a manual that's, over 150 pages long. They come to classes, we train them up. And I have no doubt that all of them are going out with every intention of fulfilling the law as it's supposed to be fulfilled, making sure that people that are not showing a proper ID, that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, that they monitor them. Sometimes those things are uncomfortable. You're not supposed to talk to people in the voting booths. Sometimes they have to tell a husband and wife, you guys aren't supposed to be talking while you're at the voting booth. It's a hard job. It's difficult to enforce those laws, but they do it. And so if the DOJ has a concern, I would appreciate them telling us what those concerns are, not a blanket, look out, we're going to get you, sent to all 50 states. Seems aggressive, doesn't seem very collegial, doesn't seem very professional to me. It also doesn't seem very transparent. We've prided ourselves on our transparency of our process here in Prince William County. And I know a number of other jurisdictions around the country have done that as well. So I have questions, and I haven't gotten the answers yet. They did respond to our letter and said that they're happy to have a phone conversation. I'm going to a conference in Atlanta, flying out after this meeting for a couple days. So I'll see if I can squeeze in a phone call there, but hopefully by the start of next week, I'll be able to have a conversation, hear more about how this program works, what it is. Because technically to go to the polling places, they need permission from either the Electoral Board or me under state code to go there. Now, I don't know what the process is. I imagine they could get a court order if we said, no, we don't want the monitors there, to have them go out there. That's fine. But that's where we are right now. So I'd reiterate, we're 100% compliant in providing language access for voters. We've had no concern raised by the past monitors. We've tripled our number of Spanish translators. We're very proud of that. Kudos to the election officer team. We had the majority of our precincts in the 2024 general election had a Spanish speaker in them, someone who speaks both English and Spanish, and they have to go through a little process with us to make sure we know they can speak Spanish. They get paid a little extra for that. That was only maybe a dozen, 15 precincts when I started here, and we've really expanded that. And we identify the precincts that need it too, so we know the places that it's most needed, where there's a large community of Spanish speakers, and we target our Spanish speakers for those locations. We're following all our state laws regarding voter list maintenance to remove non-citizens and other unqualified voters. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, but we talked about that extensively. The board had questions. They asked me to look into things. I went beyond what are the requirements of us by the state and by the law to examine the issue, and we looked at it extensively, found that we were, doing the list maintenance we're supposed to do, and that we're, we've also, the board, we've had conversations after elections about referring, any criminal activity to the proper authorities, if that's necessary. There's each election, we mark any potential concerns in the office, we bring those to the board, and then we have a discussion about whether we should be referring those or not referring them, and some we do and some we don't. We have never referred anything for non-citizen voting. The predominant legal referrals that we make are people that attempted to vote twice, and I say that very cautiously because we found that usually it's people that have had a ballot curing issue, and more than likely it is either senility or an honest mistake of, well, I wasn't sure, so I sent both of them in. So that's all to say that I have full faith in our compliance, with the law. The president who made the marks the other day does as well. He said this in 2024 about Virginia, taking a strong lead in securing the elections, protecting every legal vote, and keeping illegal aliens that have been let into our country from voting, making sure that elections are fair and secure. Every state should follow Virginia's lead. He praised Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin was enforcing the laws that came to him that didn't change substantially under Glenn Youngkin. They hadn't changed substantially since Glenn Youngkin and the new governor, Spanberger. So appreciate that, because I do think that Virginia does have laws that lend itself to high levels of election security, from how we handle our equipment to all the equipment being offline to using paper ballots, which are used in, I think, 98% of jurisdictions around the country at this point. There's a few holdouts that are apparently in Louisiana and Texas, but they're getting closer to 100% all the time. So I wanted to note on that report that's related to alien voting, and there's been some discussion on the numbers, and Heidi, you mentioned the 280,000, maybe it's higher, maybe it's lower. I've seen analysis in the news of both. I don't think we have any way of knowing. What I do know from that report that they verified based on the comparison of the SAVE data, and I would note Virginia is a SAVE state. Virginia runs our database against federal sources that then, if there are updates, they then notify us, and we then make the changes for our voters, just like all of the localities do across the state. We've talked about the issues with that, which is basically that if anything at current, that system snags people that are likely or almost for sure citizens, but that failed to check a box on the voter form. It's kind of the opposite of what happened in. I just caught the news last night about the whole New Jersey thing that happened. Their system was people were answering the form correctly, but it was automatically registering them and created confusion. I certainly empathized with them last night of coming into a position where you come in and there's a mess that you have to clean up. that resonated with me watching that press conference last night. So the states that did share their data, 25 states shared their data with the feds. 68 million registration records were compared, and they identified 28,000 non-citizens on those rolls. That's an overall total of 0.041% of all registrants. I should note too that it's common that people who are not qualified to vote are on the rolls for a certain period of time. Moving, felons, non-citizens. It's a really small number, and it's what requires us to constantly clean and maintain the voter rolls. But at any given moment, you're going to have someone who's potentially not qualified that's on the rolls. I think I can't remember the name, I think there's a Texas candidate right now who's in some hot water for having voted after having potentially moved. So it can be an honest mistake, it can be a nefarious mistake or a nefarious intent. But we are maintaining those rolls. I noticed in the report that it didn't say anything about whether they had voted or not, which tells me that either very few of them voted or none of them voted, because I imagine, given the president's remarks on this, that if that was a high number, it certainly would have wanted to share that to reinforce that not only are these people registering, but they're potentially voting. And, we only want qualified people registering, and we only want qualified people voting. So we know that the number of unqualified people is a small amount of the voter rolls, and we shrink it down constantly. And we know that among that group, that it's a very small number of people that actually go out and cast a ballot. The New Jersey situation actually provided some light on that. They had 6,000 people register to vote that were non-citizens. They filled out the form correctly. From what I could tell, they had indicated they weren't a citizen, and the system registered them anyway. I would imagine that creates some confusion when you then get something saying you're registered to vote. You probably would be confused and think, oh, well, maybe I am registered. I don't know. And in that case, I think 400 of them roughly went out and voted then, which again, even in that scenario where there would be some confusion as to whether you were qualified or not, it's a really small number. It's far less than 10% that actually went out and voted. So as I was thinking about this with the number of individuals that are there, I know that there's been analysis of recounts. So the Fair Vote is a nonpartisan organization. They advocate for things like RCV, which I know none of you guys are fans of, and some other things. They actually advocate for, they did this partly to see what's the threshold that states should put for recounts in terms of when it should be automatic. And they studied 6,929 statewide elections over the last quarter century or so. There were only 36 recounts initiated in those, and only 3 of those recounts were reversed. So it's a really rare instance that the votes, as they're counted, are reversed. It's only 3 out of nearly 7,000 elections that happens in. The margin for difference in those races was only once more than 0.01%. There was apparently a Vermont auditor of accounts. I don't know what that position is, but that one was overturned. It had a 0.06 margin. The other 2 were a Senate race in Minnesota and a race for governor in Washington that were only 0.01. The results were upheld the other 6,926 times. So that's all to say that the margin, we're talking about these numbers, 0.041% of all registrants, 0.06% margin. So that margin would exceed what would be a recount only one time out of nearly 7,000 elections. So obviously we should maintain our voter rolls. Obviously our officers should uphold the law. Obviously we should do everything we can to make sure that it is perfect as it can be. No human system is going to be 100% perfect. No system like voting that's complicated, that has a lot of rules, where we have rules where we can't just expel people from the voter rolls. There are federal rules that require that there's a period there before we move people on. That's all to say that the number of individuals that we're talking about confirmed here is very low, and the number of times that impacts an election is either somewhere between low or non-existent. So that's all to say that I think our elections process is a very secure one in our country. And, different politicians can say what they want to about it. I know what my 16 years of experience has, and I know the dedication of the people that have the positions like I do, that take their oath very seriously. And as I noted, only one of those elections could have potentially been impacted, and that would be if all of those non-citizens were voting, which we know from what happened in New Jersey yesterday, that we can't get all of our citizens to vote, obviously, so we never have everybody vote regardless. So I just want to talk about that, about election integrity. I think as we go through this fall, I'm going to highlight a particular area. I wanted to go back to non-citizens. We talked about it a couple years ago. I wanted to go back to it. And I think throughout this fall, we'll talk about some different issues like this, about how we secure our election equipment, how we make sure mail voting works, and just continue to provide education for people. We are doing another open house, I think August 29th, thank you. Saturday, August 29th is our rough date. We're finalizing that right now. We're hoping to get invites out here over the next week or so, and make that public so that people can come, as we've done for several years now, come in, see how the process works, and get a chance to learn more about things like this, learn more about how our process works, how we test our equipment. You get to go in a room with John where he shows you literally how we test the equipment and see it in action. So we'll continue to highlight some of those things in the fall. Any questions or thoughts about that?
Madam Chair. So I appreciate that review. I would be inclined, because there is so little, in my view, that the DOJ has done in the election space for over a year and a half that has been in good faith. And the tenor of the letter is basically, we're going to have our people here to watch you. It wasn't, we've had election monitors for lots of elections. I think the last time was 2024. But the Department of Justice reached out ahead in time and said, we would like to have monitors here. Here's how many we want to have. Here's what we're looking at. They didn't send us a letter telling us we're going to have our monitors here. And the tenor of the letter, the fact that they were requesting all this information that had nothing at all to do with the language requirement, I would be inclined to say, no, we don't want your federal monitors. It's unusual to have them in a primary. I don't think we have anything to hide. And, I think they would have a very long, boring day if they're here. But I'm willing to leave it up to Eric to, continue discussions with DOJ. And if he feels comfortable that there's a positive reason to allow them to be here, then I'm comfortable with the decision he makes.
No, I don't feel comfortable, but of course that's my job. So I'm happy to do that. And I think that, my presumption leans towards, well, of course let's allow people to see our process and observe it. But there are a number of concerning signs that go opposite of what we've been asked to do over the last 6, 7, 8 years is be incredibly transparent. In Arizona, they call it radical transparency in our process. So we're not seeing that from them. And that is not really respectful of what we've had to go through. And I think especially for our officers, they already have observers at most elections watching what they do. That's not comfortable. They're not doing anything wrong. But it's not comfortable to sit there and have somebody, taking notes on what you're doing all day long. It feels weird. And that's okay. They accept that. But I want to know if they're talking about, well, we're making sure non-citizens are not votable. What does that look like? Are they going to be identifying someone? Are they going to be potentially arresting someone at a polling place? And how would they evaluate that information with the limited information that they have? I doubt that they would say that would be their intent. Obviously the most positive way to view it is they're there to make sure the laws are being upheld, and that's entirely possible. And a middle ground would be that it's used as a chilling effect for some voters. That's entirely possible too. And the worst case scenario would be that they're, creating some officer using the worst possible way to interpret what they're doing, and that's possible as well. So I'd like to see them explain more, answer those questions a little bit more, and see where that goes, and then kind of make a decision. And I've, reached out to you all. You all have provided your, opinions on that, and I appreciate that input and guidance. And anyway, I'm fine with that if you guys are okay with that, and I'll continue to provide you with updates on what the DOJ says on that.
For the record, I would say that I do not object to having federal election monitors. We are certain about our following the law and doing everything by the books, and so we have nothing to hide. We should not be afraid. I feel as though, you're seeing problems that don't exist, that aren't there, and so I feel like you're being more defensive than is necessary. And as long as everything is on the up and up, we have nothing to hide. Bring it on.
I mean, I appreciate both your perspectives, and I identify with and understand both of them. So I think we'll see what the DOJ says, and we'll have follow-up conversations.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, related to the August primary, related to that, before I forget too, we did get, it was late yesterday, but I was able to get it in time, the feedback from the parties. The Dems did not have any feedback or objections. The Republicans did. We had sent a list of officers. I wasn't sure if they would get it back to us in time today, but we did receive it. And you guys have a copy there. There are 3 Republicans that were objected to, and then 3 nonpartisans that were nominated by the Republican Party. The Dems would all stay the same as they are. The objections were to Leatherman, Onyema, and Simpson. And then the Republican nominations would be, from the nonpartisans, would be Adamson, Lamb, and Lucas.
So I have one question about those that were objected to. Then are they removed, or are they pushed into the nonpartisan, or what happens to them?
we just shift them. So if they're objected to, and based on your guys' approval of that, any of the Republicans that are the officers that were objected to would just be moved to nonpartisan officers, and the nonpartisan officers are nominated by the party. We contact them first to make sure that they're okay with representing the party. Usually they say yes. And then if they say yes, then we shift them to, a Republican. If they object to that, then we keep them as a nonpartisan officer.
Thank you.
So we could use a few more Republicans if you guys want to approve this list. I know Dina, I'm sure would love to have a few more officers to work with for the primary.
Is there a motion to approve this list of new election officer applicants?
So moved with the changes that we noted, the 3 on 3. I will move we approve these officers.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Thank you.
Okay. Updates on the current election. No significant voter operational issues that have gone on so far. Everything's been going smooth. I do have one issue I'm going to talk on. It hasn't affected the public or any voters at all. But just to explore, some of the challenges we meet sometimes. Task progress, we have 240 tasks complete, another 100 plus to go. And we are behind schedule on about 8 right now. So that's about 97% compliance. I feel like that's pretty good, especially given the number of compressed schedules we've had this year. So I looked over them. There weren't any issues with that. I did not wasn't able to generate a copy in time. I just got back, and I've kind of been from paternity leave, and I've kind of been catching up on emails and communications, and then the DOJ issue came up. We got an election going on. So I will send the board a detailed list of where we are exactly with all these tasks so you guys can see. That way, if you have any concerns, you can reach back out to us and let us know. Very limited voters. As of yesterday, we had 108 early voters that have come in and 133 mail ballots returned. I mean, primary elections are usually fairly light turnout as it is, and we only have a Republican primary this election, so that negates a number of voters that would come out normally. So it's going to be even less than we typically see. But we have seen pretty good returns on the mail ballots, 1,300. I think that is about a little over a quarter of the ballots that were sent out. So pretty good return rate on that.
I have a question about, I just voted at the Office of Elections a couple of days ago. And because we were not meeting there for today, we were meeting here. So anyway, and the first question I was asked is, this is a Republican-only election or primary. Are you okay with that? In other words, do you want to, and yes, I am a Republican, so yes, I do want to participate in this primary. But the question is, if someone says no, I guess they're not given a ballot? Is that how it goes?
Yeah, I mean, we had talked about some language and crafted language for the officers and tested out during early voting. It seems to have worked pretty well so far, because we're a predominantly Democratic county at this point. So our concern was that we would have, and we've had a lot of people come in that have not voted. I don't know what the exact number is. I mean, obviously we're not checking them in, so we can't track that. But we've had a significant number of people who've come in who think they can vote in the primary and they want a Democratic ballot, but there isn't one available. So we've been confirming that for people, one, so we know that they know what they're going to get in terms of a ballot, and also so we're not checking people in, and then they get the ballot and go, oh, I'm not interested in voting this, and so it just saves a lot of mistakes and issues, and we're trying to make sure to communicate that clearly to voters.
Thank you.
And with the numbers that we have time to have those communications, so it doesn't hold up any lines or anything.
For the record, I was number 86.
Okay. Okay, so ballot issues during logic and accuracy tests. So we did have an issue that didn't affect the voters, but when we had our election day ballots come in for LNA and we were testing them, John and the operations team noticed that as we got into certain precincts, we were having a lot of kickbacks, a lot more kickbacks than we usually have. So we talked about the issue and decided that what made the most sense was just to start over again. We have since followed up with our vendor, and they have a whole number of printers, and I've seen this happen before. They use these massive printers. They'll have 5, 6, 7 lines going at these big print shops. And one of the printer lines that had printed the ballot in particular had some kind of setting issue, so the ink was not being applied quite the same as it was typically. And that was causing, I won't say it was a lot of, John might be able to illuminate. How many ballots would you say it was out of the ones you guys tested? Was it?
It was half. So our ballot order was split between 2 printers, and one half that was printed on the one printer
Yeah,
that
the
had an
printer
issue
line.
was being rejected.
Yeah.
I would say about 75%
Oh,
of the
okay.
feeds were being rejected.
Yeah. So rather than trying to figure out, okay, which ones are good, which ones are bad, we just said, let's just reprint all of them and start over again. We had plenty of time before the election. We always do LNA testing for election day well before. So they did complete LNA more recently. There were no issues with the testing process. It all came through. So that's why we do that. I think it's also notable because, several years ago we switched over to getting the actual, rather than just generating paper ballots from the ballot images ourselves and doing LNA, which is what we used to do. We switched over to getting the actual ballots from the printer because while the testing the ballots that we print would enable us to see, are there alignment issues with the ballot or is there some kind of problem with the machine? What it doesn't tell us is that the cut of the paper, the ink and how it's applied, is all that working properly. So that change to our logic and accuracy process allowed this to be caught. And, we appreciate that our vendor here did look into this and figured out what the problem was. And they're not going to charge us anything extra for it. They're reprinting those ballots for free. So no impact on any voters, but I just did want to discuss it both in the sense of that we do encounter challenges and problems sometimes. We do face them. And I know I talked with Keith when I first started. They had a lot of printer issues, and we went with a national, a large election-focused printer, partly because of this, because they would be able to reprint all of them for free, because they're going to analyze the issue really closely. There's no way you can prevent, when you're printing tens of millions of ballots, potential little problems that occur. But that's why we test all our machines. That's why we test the ballots before the election, to make sure that we realize that before we get to election day, and then it's a bigger problem. If this was on election day, we would have to have all those ballots put in the emergency bin, and then we'd have to have the officers potentially hand count those at the precincts. And in a small election like this, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal, but you don't want that kind of chaos for the officers. You don't want questions about the integrity of the election that are related to that. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight, it's a good example of some of the problems that we face, how we plan for them, and how we overcome them during an election. I just want to say thank you to the team. I just finished 2 months of paternity leave. It was really great. My son Everett is 6 months in a few more days. He's doing great. He's healthy. So me and my wife Helen and Everett it was really great to get that time. And I've been working election for 16 years, so it was more time than I've had off in quite a while. And so to get to spend that with my son was really great. I do things backwards. I had heart surgery and then had a kid in my 50s. So, I'm maybe not doing things the right way, but I wanted to just say thank you to John. John served as the acting director of elections while I was out. He did a fantastic job. Everything has been smooth and running right as it should when I came back. And Talia Taylor, who's our other deputy director, she's doing a great job. And just the entire staff. We have a process that's really grouped in. We're not seeing, significant problems. We're seeing compliance with the law. And I'm just really appreciative of having a team that I was able to step away and really didn't stress or worry about it. I knew that they had it covered. So thank you to John and everybody else on the team for their great work in my absence. Okay, on to new business. So you all have a candidate to draw. I think I should note, I think I mistyped one of the names on here. I think it's spelled wrong. It might be Capicella is spelled wrong. So in 2 instances, we had candidates file at the same time at the office. When that happens, you all have to draw them. I have tubes here, each of which has a name in it of one of the candidates. So I don't know who you guys want to pull them, but you need to just pick one of the tubes, open it up, and pull out the
Mr.
name.
Secretary?
Give it to,
Oh,
yeah, give it
Both of
the
them?
same color.
Okay.
Okay, so
So which one do you have there,
this is
Keith?
Haymarket Town Council,
Okay,
so I will choose this one.
okay.
Am I doing this backwards? It's not quite as dramatic as the fishbowl, but
We talked about we need one of those cool lottery machines that, you know, the
Right,
thing comes
right.
up, but,
so Haymarket Town Council, David Capicella
okay.
will be listed.
Okay.
So he'll be first on the ballot, that's right?
Well, there you go. My apologies. I think I spelled his name wrong, and he gets to be first on the ballot. So, Keith, you want to just confirm that the other tube does have Matthew Gallagher's name in it, so that we can verify that it's been done properly.
Matthew Gallagher.
Okay. So Capicella will be first.
Madam Chair, you have the honors for Quantico.
Thank you very much. Opening up to see who will be listed on the ballot first in the Occoquan Town Council race. And the winner is, well, Brandy Malley, M-A-L-Y, will be listed first for Occoquan Town Council.
Quantico.
I'm sorry, Quantico.
Those cues.
Okay. And second was Nadia Majid. So,
We will prep the ballots with that all in mind.
very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Those are really high-tech.
Well done. So our next order of business is approving the 2026 general election preparations. So I
Okay.
think this is what ballot order and election officers.
Well, we are trying to stay ahead of things, and if you guys, approve these today or give us some changes to them today, it lets us get prepared. I know in August we will have a unusual election to actually follow up on. So you guys we'll have a post-election board meeting related to that. So I don't know if you guys will want to meet in August or not, but this lets us go ahead and get started with training preparations, staffing preparations, stuff that really has a long front lag time to it. You can see on the slide here, there is our third sticker from the sticker contest. This is the one that'll be used this November. Prince William County is for voters. It has the year of Prince William County's founding there, as well as some different symbols of the battlefield, the Marine Museum, and the Prince William Forest Park, I suppose. So a little montage of Prince William there. That'll be in use this fall. Okay, so you all have charts, and we have sent to you the suggested numbers as it relates to ballot order equipment, all that. So our ballot order here that you all have been sent, mail is requested by application, so our printer prints those out with each individual, sends them out. Early voting we use on demand, so we don't have to print ballots for those. It's only related to election day itself. We went with John prepared all these projections, so I want to say thank you to him for his extensive work getting all these tables ready for you all. He went with a 50%, 8% planning projection. Again, we are not trying to predict the actual outcome of the election, but we're trying to think about what we think it will likely be. And then we used a 40% overage. So assuming that 58% will be a rough estimate of what we might expect on election day, going 40% higher than that total. The reason for that is while elections are usually in the 40s, the last time President Trump had a midterm election, we saw a significant increase. It was 57%. So we feel like 58% is higher than any of the last 4 midterms that we've seen, and kind of on par with the last Trump midterm that we saw in Prince William County and what the turnout totals were. To give you an idea, and for those watching what this looks like on the table, here are a few examples. So the election day ballots that we would print are listed in the left column here, so you can see it ranges from 1,000 to 2,000 with varying numbers. They always end in 100 because that's how they package the ballots for us. On the right column is the total voters. So I should note that's not election day voters, that is total voters. So if a few of these look a little bit close, know that we know that some of those voters voted in early voting and mail voting, and that can vary from precincts. Some precincts we're going to have 60% of the voters there are going to use early voting and mail, but in some locations they don't vote by mail a lot, or they don't have an early voting that's super close to them. So in some instances you might only see 20 or 30% of voters use those options for voting. So our goal is always to, the state recommends we print one for every voter. That's a lot of money spent that we don't need to spend, but we also do want to make sure that we are really exceeding whatever the total that we need is. So if you take precinct 308, for example, we have 1,000 ballots that we have proposed here to print. We had 745 voters. We can assume that probably 400 or 500 of those were election day. That gives us a good breathing room of 500 voters. So I think we try to find that balance between cost efficiency and making sure that we are prepared for election day. In the worst case scenario that we do have a precinct that is getting low on ballots, we do have the option to print ballots at the warehouse. We do have a custody process for that, should that happen. We haven't done that in a long time. Well, I don't think really ever, except for the Gainesville special election where we had that ballot printing issue. We had to do that, but otherwise we haven't had to do that, which is a good thing. It's, we want to worry about as few things as possible on election day because we know things will pop up that we don't have any control over. In terms of staffing, we have one of each of our chief, assistant chief, and the EPS that help out with the equipment. A greeter, poll book specialists varying from 1 to 3, depending on how busy that precinct is and how many poll books we have. A booth officer to help out at the voting booths, and a scanner officer. The idea here is that we have good coverage throughout the precinct, so the officers have eyes on everything that's going on in the process, but also enough people that they can rotate. So when a poll book officer needs a break, there's a chief and assistant, somebody can step in and help out for them, or maybe there's a lull and they have 2 poll book officers, but they only need 1 for a little while so that somebody can get a break. So we try to think about that when we're factoring this in to make sure that there's enough time for officers to rotate breaks and that kind of thing. I think honestly I don't think they're going to be clamoring for breaks too much. They're probably going to be fairly bored during this election. So we hope they bring their reading materials and get caught up on their reading. 7 to 9 officers at most precincts. There's a couple that have a little more, a little less. This leadership team model has worked well. Having the tech specialists and the chiefs and the assistant chiefs all train on the equipment means you have multiple people, and we're just seeing fewer and fewer technical issues on election morning, which is always our biggest challenge, making sure that everybody by 6 a.m. has their equipment up and running, their doors open, and they're ready to help voters. I noted it factors in breaks, and then people can rotate positions as well, so it gives them a chance to be a check-in clerk for a while, be a greeter for a while, that kind of thing. In terms of equipment, it's either 2 or 3 poll books that we have. We always send 2, just because if there's an outage with one, we want to make sure they have a backup. So even our tiniest precincts that probably don't need 2 poll books, we send 2 to. And then we have 3 poll books at our really busy precincts where we might have more of a crowd. Not a lot of those this election, but there are some in there. At least 1 ballot scanner at all precincts, and then we'll have 2 scanners at 20 precincts in case of heavier voting periods. I'm sorry, I was talking earlier about this election. This is for November. We're not usually doing this while we're running an election, so I should note we will, they will be busier than what I was talking about. And then we have one ADA machine for all locations that's required by law. The 2 scanners, we generally tell the officers that if they don't have to open it, then don't, because it makes it a little more complicated for their results reporting at the end of the day. But we do want it to be there in case they do get busy this November. We use wait time modeling software to reality test these numbers. So again, want to giving John a lot of compliments today. Want to thank him for uploading all the precincts. They have a tool where we can take a data sheet and put it in, and then it shows the numbers. So John actually added that. It's a new feature on your guys' sheets here that he added in what the average wait time and what the worst wait time would potentially be at precincts based on the model. So you take something like the expected number of voters, the number of poll books you have, the number of scanners you have, and it comes up with several models of what the arrival patterns of those voters might look like. And it models for you, say, okay, at this precinct, the average wait time at your busiest part of the day will probably be 3 minutes. It could be as bad as 12 minutes, and it could be as little as 0 minutes. So it gives us a range. We've been using this for a while, but John actually ran that through every precinct through the model and then provided that to you all so you guys can see exactly what we expect. It's been successful, obviously, because we have seen very small lines even in presidential elections. We have been able to process voters very efficiently. We utilized a 50-second check-in time and a 5-minute voting time. Those are the only variables that we're never sure of. Our check-in time is pretty consistent. You have really fast officers, they'll get it done in 35 or 40 seconds. Well, some officers might be a little slower, maybe it's 60 seconds, but it averages out to about 45 to 50 seconds. So the model, we chose a slightly higher end there, so it would model potential longer wait time. And then a 5-minute voting time. Some of our elections, voters are in and out of that booth in 30 seconds, but voters in this election are going to have a lot of contests on the ballot. There are statewide amendments that they're going to have to read through. They might not be familiar with them. So we know it's going to take a little longer. So I think 5 minutes is a pretty good model. I think we'll see 3 and 4 a lot. I'm sure we'll have some voters that are in there for 10 minutes, 12 minutes. We do see that when there's a longer ballot with a lot of issues like this one. So this modeling expects an average wait time of only about 1 or 2 minutes for most of the day. And then at peak times, only getting as bad as 5 or 10 minutes. So I think that puts us in pretty good shape to service voters efficiently. Yeah. I should note too that anybody can check out that the MIT has an election toolkit. If you Google MIT election toolkit, you can check out the tool yourself. It's pretty cool. It's pretty fun to play around with. So. Our training process, we're maintaining the same training that we have in terms of classes. Having a chief brief, we'll be doing that next week for the primary, but that's where we go over any last minute things that the chiefs need to be aware of. That's been really useful. They ask questions, so we make sure there's not any issues that they're concerned about right before the election happens. All the leadership team has to get certification. This is a longer course where they have to, work with the equipment. They have to review scenarios with provisional ballots and get practice on how they do those, learn more in-depth procedures. Recertification is for those that have already covered all those core procedures. We have new chief training. That is for new chiefs so we can cover things a little bit more extensively than our returning chiefs. They also have to do leadership certification in addition to that. Most of the officers take the Officers Essential class, which we offer both online and virtually, and we cover all the things that they're going to need to know on election day: rules of the polling place, how to check in a voter, how you're allowed to assist a voter, how you're not. We have a new officer training that's similar but has a little bit more detail because they're first-time officers. And then I noted the only real change we're looking at is we're trying to implement some provisional training that's a self-paced virtual course. We think that would help potentially expand the number of people that can take provisional training and be aware of it. It would also, if there's an officer that's not doing a great job, we could put them in timeout on election day and be like, we need you to go do a refresher before they go back into service. But we're checking that out with a vendor right now to see if that's something that we can provide. So, but pretty similar to what we've been doing. It seems like it's working well. We're getting good reviews from our voters on the customer service and the friendliness and the efficiency of the officers. And we get a few complaints each election about someone not following a procedure or making a mistake, and we try to correct those as we go. And then we try to build those in. If it's something that's a mistake one officer made, we try to talk to that officer. If it's a mistake we saw 18 officers make, then we build that into our training so we can focus on it on the next election. Or I try to emphasize it in the chief brief when we're talking to chiefs just before election day. So that is our outline for our equipment, our staffing, our officer training for this election, and how many ballots we're going to order. Just happy to field any questions that you guys have about that or any concerns.
Any questions?
I have no questions.
I'll entertain a motion then to approve the recommended ballot order, staffing plan, equipment allocation, and training plan for the 2026 general election.
I make a motion to approve the ballot order, staffing plan, and equipment allocation for the 2026 general election.
And I will second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Thank you.
Okay, early voting hours, again, it's helpful for us to publish those to the public, especially with the changes farther in advance. We showed you guys earlier the new ordinance and what that will mean for this general election. Here's a reprisal of that, which is that the office will open on the 46th day, that Friday. Just for point of clarification, the 45th day always falls on that Saturday. We have to be open by the 45th day, which is why the Friday is always the first day. So the office and the DMV will be open for those first 4 weeks in one day, and then for those final 2 weeks, every single day of the week, including all the weekend days, we will be open at all 6 of our sites. That adds for Lazo, the Brentsville Courthouse, Haymarket Library, and why am I blanking? Dumfries, thank you. So those are the locations, and that's what the calendar looks like. And then you all set the hours each election. I think we feel like the hours have been good. Wednesday night continues to be popular. Not so popular that I think we need additional weeknights, especially given that we have 4 weekend days with all the sites open at the end, which is a time when most people go out and really vote in those last 2 weeks. We probably see 75 to 80% of the voters are really going to go out in that last 2 weeks, especially in the last 3 to 4 days. So we recommend we continue the hours, which are 8:30 to 4:30 on weekdays, 8:30 to 5 p.m. on Saturdays, and Sundays from 11 to 5. These have shown to work in the past. They also do meet all of not only the previous code, but the new code requirements for Sunday voting. That is a long enough time. It exceeds it meets the code requirement for the number of hours it has to be open on Sundays.
Okay, any questions?
Madam
No.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move we approve the same early voting hours for the fall election.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. And now we move to public comments. These are for folks that would like to say something to the board. 3 minutes each, and those that have signed up. We have 4 in order of their signing up. First is Denny Doherty.
Push the button in. It's now not lighted, is that?
Press it again. There you go. As long as it's green, you guys are good.
Okay, thank you very much. Denny Doherty, here for the Republican Party. First, want to address parity. We discussed before, the state law requires when there's an equal number of officers, that there be an equal number from each party. And for the primary, You've largely met that, but in a number of cases, there are many precincts with more Republicans, which is also recognized when there's a party primary, that officers of that party can be more heavily represented. But there's also 5 precincts in which there's more Democrats than Republican officers for a Republican primary. From the initial list you published, I hope there's been some improvements as we've gotten closer to the election day. Then secondly, I'd like to address the topic you discussed about cleaning the voter rolls. I think that's been improved, but there's a new state law in force. There had been previously challenges could be brought to the election office, information provided, and those voters contacted to determine whether they in fact still live here. We're a very high turnover community. Lots of new voters, lots of people moving away. And the state legislature changed that law to require those to go to the court. So I'm hoping that you'll have a process to work with the courts on that, because they obviously have no expertise in dealing with that topic. And it is still a needed thing. There are people who move away, don't bother to contact you, and their registrars in their new communities don't. But it's an important area. I would point out that the results of recounts have nothing to do with whether the voters are eligible. It has everything to do with whether the votes were counted properly. So that's interesting information, but not relevant to that particular question. Thank you.
Next, we have Carol Noggle.
Okay, greetings. This is still on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I am with the League of Women Voters, and some issues have come up that affect what's on the voter registration application form. It needs to be changed. Some of you may be familiar with the changes in felony convictions. There's new categories. Some felons do not lose the right to vote. And therefore, on item 3 on the voter registration application, it says, have you ever been convicted of a felony? If yes, has your right to vote been restored? The options are yes or no. So it's a little confusing if somebody's not lost their right to vote. It's complicated. We are waiting for the Department of Elections to produce a new form, because there should be at least 2 options, such as there is in item 4. That would make it much more clear. So I don't know if you've had any word from the Department of Elections or not. But it turns out also that there are people who have had their rights restored, and then we don't know what the Secretary of the Commonwealth has done, what the status is. So we can't help out somebody that we see at events that we go to. If they have had their rights restored by the Commonwealth, Secretary of the Commonwealth, then they can say yes. But if they never were needed to have their rights restored, then it's changed. That's why the form needs to be changed. So I don't know if you've been aware of that or not. We're trying to clarify it because we are meeting these folks in public. Like Saturday, we expect there may be somebody who needs to register to vote. Complicated, but so that's what we want to make sure that new form is coming as quickly as possible. And then I also want to thank the great personnel at the election office who help us out when we have somebody who at the jail who was eligible to register to vote, and we applied for absentee ballot, and it never showed up at the office until Friday afternoon, the last day before election. So Natalia went across the parking lot, got it, and brought it back. So we really appreciate that. But if somebody, as far as a registration, if there is some question, there's a very long form that will be coming to you that person has to complete. So we are going to try to stay as aware and push for a little speed to get the new registration form available. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
If I could just make a note real quick, so to both commenters so far, those are both processes that we don't control, that we are getting guidance on. We, in terms of the challenge process, we've asked the court to provide, a little more information. The integrity group reached out to us and asked for how that's going to work now. So we asked the court if they could have eyes. I think they're still catching up. I know the state has provided us guidance on the felon issue and the voter registration form issue, and we're continuing to get updates on that. And I think they're still catching up. So I think both those things are in process and hopefully will be resolved soon, but both a little bit outside of our hands, and we're kind of waiting for other parties to catch up to the new laws and let us know so we can pass that information on to you all. So as soon as we have that in both those instances, we'll provide that.
Thank you. Next up is Tony Giuffre.
Good morning, Board. Madam Chairman, board members, registrar and assistant registrar. I come down here because I feel at home here. I got old friends here, and I'm very interested in the voting process being very transparent. And I certainly agree with the registrar. I think that, and also the chairman who mentioned it, we think we're doing everything right. Okay, but there was a lesson learned a few years ago when you found out, even though you were saying you're doing things right, judge disagreed. So a little humility might be there, especially in this responding to the DOJ and their questions. Now, I didn't hear anybody say that the DOJ had no right to question or to ask questions or to ask for data. So I assume they have the right to do it. And rather than have a headline come out tomorrow saying Prince William County Electoral Board and the Registrar's Office refused to cooperate with the DOJ, it would be much easier if you just gave them what they asked for. Don't know what, and don't try to question what they're thinking, because I think asking a bureaucrat in DC what they're thinking is an impossible task. So I wouldn't even try to do that. So anyway, that would be my advice, is you just give them what they want, and as a citizen, give them what they want, because I don't want to see a headline out there that you're not cooperating with DOJ. The other thing is, did I not hear correctly, or did I misunderstand something? Because I'm having a hard time hearing that the DMV is going to be opened for early voting before the Haymarket Library is going to be open for early voting. Well, I am completely disturbed. Thanks for nodding yes on that. I am very disturbed about that, and I'm kind of like disappointed in the Secretary Scarborough. And I agreed years ago that we were going to keep the county balanced. It was an agreement made years ago that early voting was going to be open both ends of the county at the same time. So I think you need to reconsider that, because I think it's appalling that the east end gets to vote, gets many more hours of voting time than the west end of the county. So that's my biggest observance here. Other than that, I can congratulate you on doing a very fine job for doing the laws, and I'm glad to see the registrar back to work, because I think he was missed. I don't know if he was or not, but I think he was missed. All right. So you all have a good afternoon, and thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. And our last public speaker is Colin. I'm sorry, I can't read the last name. If you could please, I'm sorry.
Robinson.
Robinson. Gotcha. Thank you very much, Colin.
I intentionally wrote that carefully. So I'm here because I'm pleased with a lot of discussion I've heard this morning. I don't expect you to have all the answers, because I don't think we can right now. But in my mind, we are at an election that is most likely to be challenged in every way it can be, inside with the process, and to my concern, outside with intimidation and protection. And the president was very careful to mention military people at polls. You never know when he's blowing smoke, but if that happens, that is, and I would not be surprised if ICE shows up. And I understand that that's not totally in your purview, but we need to have information for the parties and people that are volunteers outside and what you can and can't do, and what you should report. And just to give you a thought, there are 10 steps on the path from democracy to autocracy. We're well on the way. We're at least 6 to 7 in. So have a good day.
Thank you very much. Are there any other people wishing to speak that may not have signed up ahead of time? Seeing none, I guess our next bit of business is to go into closed session. So I will entertain a motion to do that.
Make a motion to go into closed session.
In favor?
Second. We need to state the code section of the reason why we're going into closed session.
Oh, yeah. Apologies, I didn't bring the template.
I got
It was
it.
on the
You got
slide.
it? Heidi has it.
I got it. Go ahead.
Oh, there we go. I thought I wasn't prepared, but I
ahead.
was.
Turn your mic on.
Okay.
Mike.
I move that the electoral board go into closed session pursuant to Virginia State Code Section 2.2-3711, exception A, for the purpose of discussing issues related to employee performance and personnel matters. We are going to be conducting the annual review for the general registrar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So we will now go into closed session.